Welcome to Radio Free Will, coming to you live and direct from Griggstown, New Jersey. This is a podcast for sovereign people. And this is going to be our first episode, so forgive us if we make some mistakes along the way. Hopefully we'll get better and better at doing this. I'm your host, George McCullough, and on the controls is Anna Savoya. And with us today we have Michel Mockers, artist, activist, philosopher, and he's going to be running for president. So Michel, welcome to the show.
George is very nice. You accord me very, very nicely. It's a pleasure to be with you, my dear.
Did I describe you pretty good?
So far, yes.
Yeah. I've known Michel for
Don't say.
a long time now. He is one of the most energetic people I've ever met, and he has a tremendous amount to give to everybody. And but before we get into that, I want everybody to know a little bit about Michel. So, Michel, let's start talking about your life and how you got to this point.
Well, my life started, my dear, really with the war. Because I remember very well being in La Baule, where my father was director, in summertime, director of the casino, which was a very nice place. And there was, let's say, a yacht club house where I was living in summertime. And the yacht club house had, of course, a little restaurant and a bar. And there was never a radio on the bar. But that evening, there was a radio on the bar. And there were about 7 people, yachtmen, at the bar, my father and myself. And we were all silent because we were waiting for the radio to say, and the radio said it, France declared war to Germany. I was 17 years old, my dear. It's like a ton of brick which fall on your head. What is the future? What is it that's going to happen? A war? Come on. So it was terrible. So after that, I was 17. Of course, I reached 18 very fastly. At 18, you were obliged by law to go and work in Germany, in the factories, German factories.
What year was this?
1939.
Okay.
And in 1940, I was 18, but at 18, once more, you were obliged to, by law, to go and work in the factories in Germany. Of course, the first thing that many of us and myself did was not to go to Germany, but then you had to escape the Germans. And for more than 2 years, I just played escaping the Germans. Then, in 1942, my parents had rented a little house in a small village for my grandmother to take her out of Paris, where it was very, very difficult to live in Paris. When you had 2 pounds of green beans for the whole month, or a small piece of soap to do all what you want, you're washing your it was terrible. So they rented that little place in the country. And at a point, I say, I must go over there because over there, maybe there is some activity that I can eventually fight the Germans. And I was on the French Riviera, where one of my uncle, who was a Dominican, was directing a big, a location where Saint Mary Magdalena had supposedly died, and which was some kind of a pilgrimage, but it was some very big, big houses. So I spent 2 months over there, escaping the German again, and I spent 2 months, and my brother, one of my brothers, who was 2 years younger than me, joined me over there. And at a point, I remember one morning we say, hey, what are we doing here? We should fight the Germans. But to fight the Germans, one of us should stay inside of France, and the other one should try to go outside of France to reach, the Allied inside of France. So we took a coin and flip the coin and look at the coin, and my brother outside and me inside. So the next day he took a bus to Spain. Of course, he had not put a foot in Spain, that the Spain were getting him, but he said that he was Canadian. He didn't say that he was French. Otherwise, they would have just kicked him in the butt and said, go back to France. No, he said he was Canadian. So he made 6 months in jail until one morning a man came and in his cell and said, I bought you. You're a Canadian. I am the Canadian representative and I bought you. And you want to know how much it is that I bought you for? A bag of corn. Means, it was the life of a man had the value of a bag of corn at that time. Wow. So my brother went through North Africa, didn't like it in North Africa, took a boat without saying it, jumped on a boat that was going to England, which had to go first to America, because it was a convoy to Canada, because they had a convoy. He said I spent 1 month on that boat. But I was not an authorized passenger. They put me on the bottom of the boat with a company of pigs. And he said, at the end, the pigs and myself were very good friends. He told me someday. So he made all the campaign. I will pass over that. Just to come to a very fantastic story, my dear. At the end of the liberation, my boss, Pearl, will talk about her. Michel, you must go to Paris to go to the Ministry of War to give those documents absolutely in the hands of so-and-so. And I had inherited a big Lincoln Zephyr, 12 cylinders, brand new. And as soon as I want to go to Paris, I had, 100 people to go with me because there was no transportation at all left in France. So I took 5 people and I drove to Paris. And when I reached the Loire Valley, a big MP was there saying, you cannot go because there is no more bridge. So you must make a detour and pass over a canal bridge over the river. So I make the detour, I pass the canal bridge over the river, and at the end of the canal bridge there is a group of soldiers with red berets who all try to say, hey, we want to go to Paris. I was sorry, the car was full, so I passed through those guys, and I reached Paris, and in Paris I made the taxi. There was no communication at all, no metro, no buses, no nothing. So I made the taxi to deliver my 5 people somewhere. It took me 2 hours. 2 hours, it was finished after 2 hours. 2 hours, I said, now I go to my parents' apartment. And my parents' apartment were in a very nice street, just finishing in the opera. And the apartment of my parents were above a big theater. So there was an enormous door, double door. And I stopped with my Lincoln Zephyr. I stopped just right in front of the door. And during a stop, I hear in my back a screech of a car which stops just on my back. And I look in the mirror, and the guy come out of that battle, let's say old battle Peugeot, big Peugeot, but in bad condition. A guy come out of that, come to my window, and say, when your brother on the bridge of Briare asked to go to Paris, can you take him on board? We arrive, my dear, 2 years later, exactly at the same, I don't want to say minute, but seconds, in front of my parents' apartment. You have to do it, eh?
How's that possible?
Well, it was impossible, but it did happen.
Well, let's go before the war. What was France like?
Oh, very nice. Very nice, very quiet, very nice. It was very nice, in fact. There was no problem, except that, always when you were looking at, newspaper, listening to politics, of course, there was Hitler, every day in the newspapers, and, Chamberlain, all those British. So the political atmosphere, if you want, the 2 years before the war was not very pleasant. Of course, we were ignoring, especially I was 16 or 15, I was ignoring all that, but it was above the head of everybody to end up that evening, France declared war to Germany.
So France declared war to Germany. Germany didn't declare war to France.
No, because we had a pact with the Polish government that if the Germans were invading Poland, we would go to the help of Poland. Hitler did. So both England and France had the same pact with Warsaw, in fact. And when the Germans entered, we were obliged to say, hey, war to Germany. So England and France declared war to Germany because Hitler had invaded Poland.
I hear the music upstairs. Oh,
Yeah.
that's okay. So, why did Germany give so much support behind Hitler?
You talk about Germany itself or the people out of Germany?
Well, the people out of Germany.
Well, one of the problems in France, even when I was after that in the resistance, we call it that way, was to know if you were talking to somebody who was against or pro the Germans. Because you had some people pro-Germans, we went as far as, having some people really arrested by the German. They were denouncing this, saying, hey. So you always had that after the, now I'm talking after after the relative peace of Germany with France, when you had that free France with the government of Vichy, and that was the part that I was in and where the resistance was in. But once more, one of the big problems were to know who you were talking to, and that was not very, very nice and very agreeable.
Was there any support in France for Germany?
Oh yeah, in any condition you have always people to support or not to support. Always. I should say there were more people against Germany. Not in the beginning, because in the beginning the General Pétain was a figure in France since the World War I. So many people followed him, believing that he was going to save the situation and so on. But finally, the Germans came over, all over, and were the complete masters in France with the Gestapo and all that,
And when did Germany move into France?
39, 40. The defeat was in 40.
So you were already in the resistance?
No,
in 39?
not at all. I was in my personal resistance not to go to Germany.
Okay.
But the resistance itself was organized later. And it's where the British mission, that was, they did very, very well. British mission was few people, 2, 3, 4 people, sent to France with a radio. And they were supposed to help the resistance, meaning that they could provide, coming from the sky, they could provide armaments, and also provide London with information about, whatever the Germans, what they were doing, and so on and so on. But the British mission had no power to command. They were not supposed to command, military speaking, to command the resistance. They were the provider of the resistance. Mm-hmm. And they had, I should say, a very, very important, there would have been no resistance without them.
I just want to let people know out there that are listening, you've written a book about your
Yes, I wrote a book about
experiences.
my personal story, if I can say so, my personal war, if I can say so. Yes, I wrote that because several of my friends in France say, if you don't write it, it will be lost forever.
And so the book is called?
René's War. And I will tell you why René, because that's something else. If you want to navigate more or less in France, you had to have identification paper. And the big thing was to have authentic papers of somebody younger than you. So you were taking the name of somebody younger than you. So if they were checking, that person existed. So by accident, I was René. I became René. René Bello was my name in the Resistance. I never met René Bello, but he was an existing, he was, I believe, 2 or 3 years younger than me, but he was an existing person because you had to adapt. You had control of the Gestapo. You were taking a train, you were control. You were going somewhere, you were control. You were control all the time.
Did the real Rennie die, or
Yeah, absolutely.
so he died, and you just took his identification?
No. You had some who die and some who do not die. So they had the double identification, their own identification and the one that you were taking from them. I was the double of a René who existed. I don't know where. I didn't ask anyway.
And so people can purchase this book on Amazon?
Yes,
It's
they
available
can.
on
Yeah,
Amazon.
it's one
now.
of my friends who put. Not myself. It's one of my friends who put it on Amazon.
Okay, good. So just before we started recording, you were telling us about you went to Wikipedia and looked up what the person?
Pearl Corniolet. Pearl Corniolet, who was my boss in the British mission. She was not my boss, she was the boss of the British mission. And on D-Day, she asked me to join her with my men. And in 5 days, I was up to 100 men. There was another group of men, and on 5 days, 4 days, there were 800 men. Men were coming out you didn't know where. You have never seen them. All of a sudden, they were here. And I had 2 friends who had my age, but all the other men had, I don't know, 30, 40, 50 years old, you know. So today, I don't want to tell you my age. Huh? Can I tell you my age?
Yeah, go.
I think people,
Go ahead.
I think people can do the math. You already said how old you are. You were in the 1990s.
Yeah. So I can. Do you want me to precise
Not a
it?
secret.
It's not a secret anymore. I am only 95 years old. So
Yeah,
So-
pretty
so-
good shape.
You
pretty
should
good
go
shape. I don't
around.
say shape, but I start to get a little too old to flirt with ladies. You know?
No, we saw you flirting last week.
Oh, come on.
So, when did the war finish up? Or that was in what, 44? So tell us
Okay.
about life after the war.
Okay, so listen. The thing is that my grandmother was just under what was the line of separation between Free France and occupied France.
Okay.
But it was also the location, the roads by which all the German from the Spanish border, you know, all the submarine bases on the Atlantic and all that, were passing by. The center of France is mountains. They could not go through those mountains. It was too dangerous for them. So, and beside that, at the end of the road in which I was, there is a station, a railroad station, which was the only railroad station where they could send directly train to Germany. So they were trying to save all their materials, men and materials. And no, the thing is I saw all that, of course, my dear. So some units were still very, very organized. Some of them were so disorganized that once I saw 50, I count them, 50 cyclists with no tires on their wheels, only piece of rags on their wheels. You know? 50 of them, I count them. No one had any more tires, you know. So and at the same time, once I say we, not me, but I was asked to get to the British mission that day, 15,000 Germans, very well organized, in trucks, and all the trucks with the big guns, you know. So 15,000 of them, and they were not in the woods because German, the only thing, they didn't like to go in the woods because they never knew if there was not somebody behind any tree, you know. So they were not at all wanted to go in the... So those 15,000 men with all their trucks and guns and everything stopped in the middle of a road where there was no wood around. And they did ask to surrender for a very simple reason, there are no more gas. So they could not go back to Germany,
Okay.
there are no more gas. So they were obliged to surrender. So
Boy,
I did
woun't that be great if there was no more gas in the world, and then everybody would have to surrender?
to stop
Yes,
to stop the war.
just stop.
But those they really had no more gas. So the funny thing of that, I had two trucks of gas with the big, you know, the call it the German sign, you know, on the trucks. Two big canters there was an airfield, German airfield that they was using, and of course they needed that gas. So that was a very, very nice gas. And I put one of the truck full of gas to fill up all the trucks. But aviation gas cannot go into a regular car.
Yeah, aviation gas is like kerosene.
Yeah, you have to put oil into it.
Oh, like a chainsaw. You gotta put oil in it.
Exactly. So you put oil in the gas, and then you can use it in your car. Otherwise, the engine doesn't go very far. But I forgot to put some oil in the gas that I give them. So they had just, I believe, just enough gas to reach the American lines. Just enough, because their trucks was going on planes gas, on aviation gas. Come on. Little trick of the war, you know. But at the same time, I saw the most disorganized German with I don't know, wagon with horses, you know, and one at the back with a little kid, how do you call it, little roller, what
Wagon?
Yeah, little wagon with one guy in it, pulled by and at the same time, you had some still very organized little group of the real tough Germans. So you would never know, you know, they were not attacking you, and there were no tires on the bicycles, but some very organized, they were attacking you.
So, what were some of your responsibilities in the French resistance?
My personal
Yeah, what kind of stuff were you doing?
I created a group before D-Day, but we had absolutely no armament except that I had 12 men. We wanted to do something but could do nothing because we had nothing to do something. We had absolutely nothing. Then came the British mission, and what she asked me on D-Day to go around, but then she gave us, we had already received, if you want, from the sky, some armaments, you know, guns, those machine guns, everything. But, you know, we didn't even have the time to take them out of their grease from the manufacturer. And beside that, I had no military instructor. I had absolutely nobody. So the very, very first day, it was absolutely useless to try to do something. Absolutely useless. Plus, a detail. From one day to the next one week, you have all of a sudden 100 people to feed. How do you do that? So my big thing was not even to fight the Germans. The number one was to give food to all those people. So I still have a receipt from the day before the D-Day where I am picking up in a post office. I'm picking up at that time 30,000 francs. I give a receipt, and I have a copy of that receipt. It was the day before D-Day. So,
well, what took place during D-Day? What were?
So
did you know it was coming, or
no? We were expecting that D-Day was coming someday. We knew that, you know, because we had some information from London. Okay, the British mission was 2 or 3 people plus a radio, and the radio was the guy who was eventually transmitting all the information. We gave some very important information sometimes that the radio was transmitting to London. When I say they are reopening a small airfield, military airfield, that was closed at the defeat of France, it was closed, and the Germans were reopening it, and it was absolute truth. And the truck was there. I told that. At 5 in the afternoon, I told that to Pearl. At 7 in the morning, something like 50 or 60 bombers get onto it. Because, airfield was one of the key, thing for command planes and all that. So they bombed that the next morning, they bombed it. Absolutely the next morning. So you see, that's where the British mission with the radio was transmitting information to London. And at the same time was coordinating the parachutage of, big containers of armaments. So we knew that day it was coming. Because London, the radio told us that day at 1 o'clock, and we had to have an airfield that has been recognized by the British. They send a plane, we say, this is our field. So the next morning they send a plane to check if it was okay with them that we get that field. Or whether they would say, no, pick up something else. But all that with the radio. So the radio was in some ways the most important person in a British mission. Now, you had the boss of the British mission. In my case, it was a woman, Pearl Corniolet, an English woman. But the British mission was not supposed, was even, I should say, forbid to fight. There was no military commanders. There were providers. So they provide you with gun, one day at the end of it, they provide me with a full plane of you will never know it, shoes. I received a full plane of shoes. We opened it, all the containers, beautiful shoes, And I met some happy people with that, But full of shoes. So Pearl said, they must have some, in London there must be a little, Otherwise, they were sending us, plastic, for example, the plastic. We had no plastic except coming from the sky. And yet, the problem for me was that all my men, in 5 days, after that, that's another story after that. But you don't even know how to use the plastic.
What kind of plastic was it?
It was a plastic, and you put a little detonator, a little... Ploop,
oh, plastic explosives.
Explosive. But we had no plastic explosive. So when we received the first plastic explosive, what's that done for? What do you do with that? We learn, of course, fast. But, when
it could have been dangerous.
When it just come in, you don't know what it is. So, in the beginning, there was absolutely the day. My personal story, and the story I give in the book, by the way, is that I created a group of men who wanted to resist, but we have no way to resist, nothing to resist. Then the British mission comes in and provide us with containers full of armaments, the Sten. Everybody in England was manufacturing a Sten. A Sten was that short, that short gun like that with 30 or 32 bullets. But it was such a piece of junk. It was a real absolute piece of junk. And if you wanted to kill somebody in front of you, you had to start way far on the left because it was going up like that, up. So you eventually had the chance to kill what you wanted in the middle. No, it was terrible. The only accident I had in my group, I had a kid killed because that thing banged into a bench of concrete bench and started by itself and killed him.
And that was one of your people?
Yeah, it was the youngest of my people. So I had two young, my age, exactly my age. One was my right arm and the other was my left arm. So with them, we organize, I try to organize, but once more, it's so difficult to organize in few days, to organize so many men in few days. So the day that the German, we made the Maquis, we transform it on the 6th, and the German attack us on the 11th, 5 days later. In 5 days, there was no way that we could have been organized, that we could resist the German. But Pearl, in Wikipedia, if you read Wikipedia, we fought for 17 hours and we killed 86 German. Come on, we didn't even shoot once. And my formal orders was considering the situation, that if we were attacked, run in the wood. Run in the woods, that's it. Nothing else. And the woods were big enough not to, the German to go in. It was a real forest, my dear. So I was sure that they would never go in. So my formal order was, we are attacked in the woods. And that's what we did. And that's why I've been able to reconstitute, recuperating the men after that. But Pearl said we fought for 17 hours. Come on, 17 hours. We didn't kill one German.
So it must have been a very unique experience to have a female military lead in World War II. How did she get to that
No,
point?
she was not a leader. No, that we must be very, very precise once more.
Okay.
The British mission, that doesn't take out anything of their, they were very courageous, in fact, to be parachute in France and, coming from England and blah, blah, blah. But they were not supposed at all to have any military action.
The British.
The British mission were not supposed to fight. No military command.
In France.
No military command. They were just there once more to provide and to inform.
This was before Germany declared war on England.
No.
Well, why wouldn't they fight?
No. Germany and France declare war on France and England declare war on Germany the same day.
And so why weren't they supposed to fight? In France.
The German invaded France. Mm-hmm. But France, and everywhere in Europe, by the way, France was not alone to have some resistance. But France had the advantage of having that supposedly free France, which was an advantage because the Germans were not supposed to be there all the time. But so what did happen is that as Hitler was unable to invade England get organized and organized those missions to come from the sky to land in France and to organize the French resistance and the French, not only the French resistance, the French, how can I say that? All what you have to know, military speaking, if possible, for the Allies. So there were a center of information and a center of distributing armaments. That was their job, basically their job. Now, the resistance itself was by itself.
Okay. So when did you find out about the end? When was the war declared over? After D-Day or sometime after that?
No, the war was not over. The liberation of France was over.
The liberation of France.
The liberation was over.
But that was not the end of the war.
No, that was not the end of the war. Because then you had to invade Germany and go to Berlin, and the Russian on this side and the Allied on this side. So the end of my action, if you want, in France, military action in France, was the day of the liberation of France. In fact, we fought basically up to the 15th of July, very actively. And I can tell you, very actively, and we did a very, very good job, in fact. The resistance did a very, very good job, like providing gas with no oil.
The time seems to go by very, very fast here. But I want to touch on a little bit of what life was like in France post-war.
Post-war, after
Yeah.
the war, you mean? Okay. France was, politically speaking, was at the time of the war, was relatively what we could call left. The communists had, I believe, 27% of the votes in France, which is an enormous number.
Yeah, I would say.
Almost a third of the French, voters. So, and many, many towns were completely flat. Completely flat. I saw Saint-Nazaire, for example, or Brest, I went over there. In Saint-Nazaire, It was like the table here, and there was only one skeleton of a house, you don't know why, standing, because it was a submarine, the most important submarine basis. So the Allied bombed that all the time, for nothing, by the way, because those submarine bases were so strong that no bomb could destroy them. And they have never been destroyed. They still exist. They're still over there. You cannot even undo them, destroy them. You cannot. It would be too expensive, too difficult. So strong they are. So at the end of the war, you had a lot of all what was on the sea and many towns inside where the Germans did fight, you know. Total destruction. Total destruction. Then after that, no more locomotives, for example. Very few locomotives left because the Allied that was one of the number one objective, the locomotive, because the German was so if you kill the locomotive, you kill the convoy can go nowhere. So in France, there was no locomotive left. There was the automobile from before the war. And yet with a lot of restriction because there was not, the gas could not be at the pump when you go to the pump. At the end of the war, at the liberation of Paris, where I went to meet my brother, there was absolutely no transportation at all. Not at all. Impossible. There was no gas, there was no car, there was no nothing. So that was the liberation of France. Now, if you want on a longer side, something came in, the Marshall Plan. And the Marshall Plan, as much as I understand it, was more to fight against the communists than really to set up back the France. Because if people were so miserable, they would vote for communism. So you had to rebuild the towns as soon as you can to give back life to France. But the beginning was difficult, my dear, very, very difficult. For, let's say, almost 4 years, the Parisians didn't eat. You could not buy a jacket, you could not buy nothing at all. You could buy absolutely nothing. No automobile, no nothing.
You mentioned something about the house you were living in was...
That was a joke. That was almost a joke. Because after I left, the British mission asked me at the end of the liberation, you are a British, I was a British officer. I was a British officer. I was automatically, okay. After that famous battle on the 11th of June, Pearl said, I need you. I need you to go all around all the maquis, all the groups, because she was more important. She could not do that herself. She could have been taken by the Germans. Taken by the Germans, it was the end of the British mission. So she delegates me to go all the groups, visit the groups to know what they need, whatever. So automatically, I was a sub-lieutenant in the British Army. I believe I don't know which regiment of artillery I was supposed to be. Anyway, what was your question?
Oh, about the house you were living in.
Oh yeah, okay. So at the liberation, I was born by accident in Nantes. I say accident because my father had a contract. He was not at all a Nantais, but he had a contract, so he went to Nantes, and my mother was pregnant, so I'm born in Nantes. And all my youth, up to 10, if you say, was in a very nice little house just on the periphery of Nantes. And after the liberation, I had a car, I had everything as an officer. I said, I must visit, and I was going in that direction to La Baule. I must visit Nantes and see the place where I was practically born all my first years. I'd never seen it again. So I go, I drive, I arrive at that place. There was only one house missing. There was a big hole at that place. That was a gift of Mr. Clark Gable. He was a pilot or whatever it is. He was fighting. It was a lost bomb of American bomb because they bombed Nantes. Nantes was a place of rebuilding of boats, submarines. They were working on all that in Nantes. So they did bomb Nantes several times. But at that place of Nantes, which was a little outside of all those things, just one bomb. My house was a hole. That was it. There was nothing left.
So when you were with us last week, and we only have maybe about 10 minutes to go here, you were explaining about your uncle. He was he helped Jews escape.
The Dominican.
Yeah.
It was a pilgrimage. He was directing a pilgrimage site, if you want. Very big, in fact, in the south of France, because at that place, Mary Magdalena is supposed to have died at that place in a little cavern in the cliff. There is a big cliff. So he was very active in his own way. He officially created, with the Vichy government, a school for hotelry school, to learn to the hotel. And he had something like 22, I believe it was 22 students, all women. But it was absolutely forbidden. There were several houses that he was directing. It was absolutely forbidden to go close that house, because the 22 young women were 22 Jewish women. And when things happen or do not happen, after the war, on the paper of the Gestapo of Marseille, which was an important, port, in the seaport on the Mediterranean, they found all the papers of the Gestapo, and the Gestapo was supposed to go that morning to raid that school. They had discovered that it was not a real school and blah, blah, blah. And it is the morning where the Allies landed in Provence. So that then the Gestapo had something else to do than to go and pick up the girls.
Wow. And they made a movie about.
Yeah, I don't know exactly what they did, but they did something about that. And he's on the internet, he's everywhere on the internet.
All right, so we're coming to just about the end of this podcast. Time has gone by very, very fast.
Yeah, plus I talk blah, blah, blah about everything, so.
Now you're going to come back.
You tell me all the stories, of the war. I have for 2 days just to talk to you about all that.
You're going to come back and join us again for the next episode of Radio Free Will.
With pleasure, my dear. It's a pleasure.
I mean,
Plus, let me tell you something. Many people even don't know. Young people, they don't even know that World War II existed. I saw some young people they don't know, and you have people of that time who are very, in some time, I should say, pleased to hear something about that, where many participated in the American Army, whatever, in the Pacific, but they are always very pleased to learn that we did what we could to help.
It's very concerning to me. I'm fortunate enough never to have served in any war, but people seem to forget, and nowadays the way the political situation is, they seem to be wanting a World War III.
Yeah.
Even though I think we're in World War III now, it just happens to be more of a slow war.
Yeah.
But we're going to cover these topics and more next week, because you have a whole philosophy for changing the world.
Yeah.
And I want to get into detail about that philosophy. But right now, I feel like we've come to the end of this program. I want to thank everybody for listening. I want to thank you, Michelle, for coming on. I want to thank Anna for taking the controls there, and everybody join us again next week.